Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. We start by seeing a rat that is released in a laboratory and gets trapped in a cage. It searches for food when an invisible force captures and eats it. Sebastian is working on his computer on a chemical formula and runs a simulation that fails. He spits on his neighbor as she gets undressed and is disappointed when she closes the curtains. Moments later, he gets an idea and revises the chemical formula, running another simulation. This time, it shows the element as stable. Sebastian calls Linda to tell her about the solution. When she sees the man sleeping in her bed, she tells him that it is no longer his business. He shows Linda that he has managed to unravel the chemical solution for reversal. She is impressed that he was able to solve it from scratch. Linda wakes Matt to tell him they need to go to the lab. She tells him they should go in their own cars, but Matt thinks she needs to tell Sebastian about them at the right time. That morning, Sebastian arrives at the lab in a heavily guarded complex. He scans his fingerprint to enter an elevator and says his password. Inside the lab, the invisible animals can only be seen through thermal images. Matt pets an orangutan and greets a gorilla named Isabel. All the animals panic when she jumps in the cage. He puts on thermal goggles to see her and calms the animal down. When he goes in to sedate her, she bites him and then escapes. Matt chases her through the lab and finds Sebastian, telling him she has been more aggressive. Isabel has been invisible for too long, starting to affect her brain. Sebastian grabs a tranquilizer gun and bets with Matt on who will reach her first. They find and corner her, and soon Sebastian sedates her. Sarah approaches them and argues with Sebastian about injecting Isabel with the serum before testing it. She thinks it is unethical, but he believes it will save time. He ignores her objections. Linda joins them and reminds Sebastian that he hired Sarah because she is the best veterinarian in the country. Later, Linda is preparing the serum and tells Sebastian she will be ready soon. Sarah informs them that the gorilla is doing well, and Carter enters, saying he is just the medical support. Frank calls from technology and says they are ready too. Linda locks the serum in an injection gun and Matt prepares it. Sarah searches for a vein in Isabel's arm, and when she finds it, Sebastian takes Matt's gun, saying he will do it. He injects her, and the serum visibly moves through her veins and body. Her heart rate elevates. The gorilla's body begins to become visible, and they are happy that it is working. Suddenly, she starts to deteriorate and goes into cardiac arrest. Isabel's heart stops, then Linda defibrillates her. She keeps doing this several times until her heart starts pumping again. When Isabel starts to stabilize, her body continues to become visible. The technology indicates that their quantum signatures have stabilized. Everyone celebrates that they succeeded, and Sarah says the animal will be fine. Later, they all take her back to her cell together. Sebastian tells Sarah to prepare for vivisection on Monday, and when she becomes incredibly upset, Matt convinces her that he is joking, and with a smile he proves he is. Linda intervenes and suggests they celebrate their success. They celebrate at a restaurant. Alone, Linda and Sebastian have a heart-to-heart conversation, with him wanting to be back together, but she rejects him. He returns to the lab and checks on Isabel. There is also an invisible dog there, which he pets and asks what it is like to be invisible. Sometime later, Sebastian presents his findings to a Pentagon committee. Dr. Kramer asks Sebastian how they solved the reversal problem, and he lies, saying they haven't solved it, much to Linda's and Matt's surprise. Kramer says they need to see results soon, and if they can't make it work, he will find someone to replace him. Linda and Matt are angry with him, but Sebastian explains that if they reported their findings, the Pentagon would have taken over their project completely. His idea for the next step is to jump to human testing without authorization. Matt worries that they might get into trouble, but Sebastian tells them this is their chance to change the world and win the Nobel Prize. Later, they inform the team about the plan and none of them like it. Sebastian tries to convince them, but Sarah can't believe the committee approved this. Sebastian doesn't care what they think and says they will go through with it anyway. On the day of the procedure, Matt tells Sebastian that he could change his mind, but he just ridicules him. They enter, and Sebastian lies down on the bed, then they connect him to an intravenous strip and restrain him. He says he feels a little tense and that his heart rate is elevated because of it. Frank and Janice argue over who will get his Porsche if he dies. They irradiate the serum and bring it to Sebastian, who wants to inject it into himself, saying that if something goes wrong, the others cannot be blamed. He injects the serum and Linda waits for the reaction. Everyone starts to panic because they don't see anything happening to his body immediately. Suddenly, Sebastian starts to feel something. He begins to convulse, and the process of becoming invisible starts in patches all over his body. Sebastian says it hurts a lot more than he expected. Frank tells them he is on the verge of a seizure. As he becomes invisible, his vital signs become even more erratic. They prepare the defibrillator, and Frank tells them Sebastian is starting to change, then Matt tells them to wait for the process. Everyone watches him change as his vital signs stabilize. When he becomes completely invisible, Frank calls the moment when the phase change occurred. Matt says he is fine but is in shock from the trauma. 17 hours later, Sebastian wakes up and screams in pain, asking Linda and Matt to turn off the lights. He says he can't close his eyes, and Linda tells him he can, but his eyelids are transparent. Sebastian gets up and goes to the mirror, then the three move to the general area of the lab. He immediately starts frightening everyone until Frank grabs a pair of glasses and sees him with them. Matt and Linda take him back to his room and turn on the monitoring monitor while Sarah does the same in the other room. She will be the first to take the shift, and Carter will take the next. Sarah grabs the last monitor and turns off the lights. Very soon, she falls asleep, and Sebastian roams the lab and enters the observation room. He begins to touch her while she sleeps. Sarah wakes up and asks if he is there, then checks the monitors, but as soon as she turns around, he goes back to bed. The next day, she tells Linda about what happened but is not sure if it really happened and feels awful. Linda also doesn't know what to do, and Matt wants to talk to him, although Sarah discourages him. Later, he is checking Sebastian's vital signs and questions him as if it were a procedure. The results show everything is normal. Sarah removes the medical device from him and manages to make her even more uncomfortable. Frank and Janice enter the lab, and she goes to the bathroom but feels like someone is watching her, so she puts on the thermal goggles to be able to urinate. She even mentions the same to Carter after lunch. The team talks about Sebastian and the things he can do now that he is invisible. It seems everyone agrees he won't do anything good. As soon as they leave the kitchen, a chair that appeared to be empty turns. He had been listening to them the whole time. That night, it is Linda's turn in the lab. She is working on the serum when Sebastian starts messing with her too, moving her soda can across the lab. He starts giving her a massage and asks if she wants to find out what it would be like to make love to an invisible man on his last night in that state. She rejects his advances and leaves. The next day, Matt and Carter prepare the serum to bring him back, and Linda sprays her arm so they can see her veins. They inject him with the serum, and he reappears, just like with Isabel before. The moment more of his organs start to appear, he says something is not right and begins to choke. His vital signs become erratic. Sarah realizes that his lungs have stopped and asks Carter to intubate him. Sebastian breaks his restraints, then the men hold him down. He pushes Carter with incredible strength and knocks down Matt, rising and looking disoriented as his flesh begins to appear and disappear again. After he faints, Sarah and Linda intubate him before he becomes invisible again, and Matt compresses his heart. They get a pulse, but he goes into shock as he disappears again. Sebastian wakes up later with Linda by his side. She tells him he almost died. He says the committee doesn't need to know what happened yet. Since he will be stuck in that state for a while, they make a synthetic mask for him. Linda cuts an opening for the mouth and 2 holes for the eyes while the mask is still on him. Matt brings a mirror so he can see himself. Now they need to figure out what went wrong. Linda and Matt work from home and can't understand the formula for the reversal serum. He says he is not a genius like Sebastian, capable of reaching the correct conclusion. 10 days later, Sebastian is becoming physically and psychologically ill from all the testing they are putting him through. He argues with Matt about it, and then Linda comforts him. Sebastian says what they are doing for him is not enough. That night, he can no longer stand being there, so he decides to leave. He warns Carter, but he can't let him leave because the rules prohibit it. Sebastian says that is his rule and that he can change it. He leaves and says he will be back in a few hours. Carter calls Linda to tell her. Sebastian evades the security guard outside, who has started to worry that his car hasn't moved for a while, and drives out of the complex. He stops at a traffic light and scares some children a lot. Linda and Matt leave their apartment to return to the lab, and she tells him he could be anywhere. Sebastian enters his apartment and grabs some of his things to take back to the lab, then sees his neighbor undressing again. Moments later, his neighbor is taking a shower, and the doorbell rings. She doesn't see anyone in the hallway, but rings again, so she opens the door and comes out, leaving ample space for Sebastian to enter. He follows her to her room and watches her. He starts moving her mirror, scaring her. Sebastian grabs her and forces her to do something inappropriate. Meanwhile, Linda is looking for him in her apartment. The door is unlocked, so she enters and sees he left his mask there. Sebastian leaves his neighbor crying and realizes Linda is in his apartment. Back at the lab, everyone is preparing to find him. They distribute equipment and talk about the fact that no one but them can find out what he is. Suddenly, Sebastian arrives and says he just went to his apartment to grab a few things. Linda confronts him, telling him what she didn't see in his apartment, and Matt asks why he had to go in public. Sebastian replies that he is still the project leader and that this is his decision. Linda threatens to report him to the committee if he leaves the lab again. When everyone leaves, Sarah learns from Linda that the committee doesn't know what they did, but she promises to stay silent. Linda and Matt wonder if Sebastian's invisibility has started affecting his mind. The next day, Carter is conducting tests on Sebastian, and they talk about what he did the night he left. Sebastian doesn't tell exactly what he did but tries to steer the conversation to get a positive reaction from Carter. That night, Linda is sleeping, and Sebastian pulls her blankets and starts dressing her. Suddenly, Linda's phone rings, and she wakes up from the nightmare. Matt tells her he believes he has found the solution. They are soon seen in the lab explaining this to Sebastian and the rest of the team. They run a simulation, and it gets only to 95% before it starts to fail, which sends Sebastian into a spiral of rage, and he leaves. Linda goes after him and confronts him about his treatment towards Matt, saying he is trying to fix him. Sebastian says he has a gift he can't even use, and if she weren't so short-sighted, she would let him explore it. Later, he has an idea about the security camera and tells Frank he will be in the lab. He grabs some tools and rigs the camera to make it look like he is there. After that, he goes to Linda's apartment and spies on her. Matt enters her apartment, which makes Sebastian angry, so when they go to the other room to make love, he breaks the window. Matt sees nothing, so Linda calls the lab to check if Sebastian is there. Frank says he is watching him on the monitoring camera and is not suspicious at all. Back at the lab, Sebastian is furious because of Linda. The dog keeps barking, which makes it worse, so he goes to the dog's cage and kills it. Sarah finds the dog the next day. She immediately confronts Sebastian about it and gets nowhere with him. They check the security camera, and it shows Sebastian in bed the whole night. Later, Linda is in her room and thinks Sebastian is there. She says he is not being funny and throws a blanket over where she thinks he is. Scared, Linda runs out of her apartment and goes to her car, driving to the lab. Matt tells her Sebastian is sleeping, as can be seen on the monitor, but she goes to check his room anyway. She realizes he is gone and deduces he did something with the camera. Linda calls everyone back to the lab while we see that Sebastian is outside. Janice asks if they should go after him, but Linda thinks they should go to the committee. Matt says he has been leaving night after night, and they have no idea what he is doing. Linda tells the rest that she and Matt will assume full responsibility before the committee. Sebastian is there, listening to what they are saying. When the two are leaving, Matt says they will inform the team the next day. Later, they are at Kramer's house, and Sebastian spies on them from outside. Kramer says he will call all the necessary people, while telling Linda and Matt to leave through the door, telling them to pack their things. Kramer will make the call, but his phone line is down. He hears the door and goes to the backyard. Sebastian appears from the smoke of his pipe, then pushes him into the pool and drowns him. He then leaves the pool before Kramer's wife comes to check on him. The next day, Linda returns to the lab, and Sebastian scares her. He says it will be a busy day. Matt tells her he came back at 3 in the morning and has been wandering the lab since then. Kramer didn't call them back, so Linda calls him, but it is his wife who answers, saying he drowned. Linda tries to call one of the generals, but the line drops. Matt checks the phone and discovers they have no outside line, so they go to inform security. When they enter the elevator, it doesn't accept their passwords. They go back and tell the others. Frank checks the security system while Matt says it could take a few days for someone to find them there. Frank discovers there is nothing wrong with the system, but that Sebastian removed all their access. They grab their goggles and head out, except Janice, who forgets hers and goes back. When she goes through the door, Sebastian kills her. The others look for him in his room, but he is not there. Linda asks him to tell them where he is. Sebastian tells her he can't let them turn him in because he likes his power too much. He also tells them that Kramer died before he could tell anyone. Linda notices Janice is missing, so they run to find her, but unfortunately discover her body in a closet. Carter thinks Sebastian has gone crazy, but Matt believes he planned it all because he knew they would turn him in. Sarah slaps Linda, shouting that she could have stopped the experiment at any time. Frank agrees with her. Carter just wants to know what they should do. Linda says they won't wait. The team activates the motion detectors and sees him on the monitor. Matt and Carter go to find him while the rest cover their backs. The two split up when Frank and Sarah return. Linda loses him on the monitors, and Matt nearly shoots Carter. They think they see him, and Matt goes to get him, but it turns out to be just a heater. Sebastian grabs Carter, and when Matt turns around, he starts shooting, hitting one of the pipes. Sebastian can be seen because of the steam, so he shoots him again. He releases Carter and seriously injures him. Linda tells Matt that Sebastian is there, so he shoots the pipes again and manages to see him, but Sebastian escapes and locks Matt in the tunnel. However, he remains on Matt's side of the door, only that he can't see him because the temperature has risen and made the goggles useless. Linda goes out to help Matt and tells the rest they should get Carter. Matt tries another approach to see him, and they argue about Linda, then Matt punches him. Just as Sebastian manages to knock him down, Linda saves him. Meanwhile, Sarah and Frank find Carter. She leaves Frank there to apply pressure to his wound until she can get blood for a transfusion. Sarah grabs blood packets from the lab when she hears Sebastian come in. She spills the blood on the floor to see him and waits a bit. When he doesn't appear, she grabs the last remaining packet and goes to the other door when he grabs her from across the room. She opens the packet and spills it on him, but he still gains the upper hand and throws her with the tranquilizer gun, then breaks her neck. Simultaneously, Linda and Matt find Frank just as Carter dies. They return to the lab and find Sarah dead. Then, Sebastian kills Frank when he has his back turned. He also injures Matt and locks them in the freezer. While Linda uses duct tape to close Matt's wound, Sebastian prepares to finally escape. Matt loses consciousness, and Linda tries to get out of the freezer. She has an idea of how she can do it. In the meantime, Sebastian is grabbing what he needs to blow up the lab. He mixes some liquids and makes a grenade, and throws it to test it. Linda creates a magnet with the defibrillator and opens the door by pulling the lever with the creation. She pulls Matt out and starts a fire to warm him up. Before leaving, Linda grabs a gas tank. Simultaneously, Sebastian makes more bombs and places them on a lab device set to explode in 5 minutes. When he enters the elevator, Linda catches up with him and ignites him. She keeps doing this while he tries to take off his clothes before it fuses to his skin. Linda loses gas in the tank, and Sebastian escapes. Then, she activates the sprinkler system. He approaches her and assaults her, trying to kill her. Fortunately, Matt appears and quickly knocks him out. While helping Linda, Matt doesn't realize Sebastian is still alive and then attacks them again. Luckily, he accidentally electrocutes himself, and his body begins to appear for a moment. They find the bomb, then run and enter the elevator shaft. Matt goes first, and Linda follows him. The bomb explodes and sends the elevator shooting up in the shaft. They hide just in time, but it descends again, stopping right above them. They keep climbing when Sebastian grabs Linda, and as they struggle, they fall back into the elevator, causing it to descend once more. She and Sebastian fight, and when he kisses her, she sees an opportunity to free herself from him. She clings to the cable and disconnects the elevator. The unfortunate Sebastian falls into the fire to his death, and Linda climbs up to Matt. After everything, the two exit the lab and are rescued by the paramedics.